World and Me by Ta-Nehisi Coates. Ta-Nehisi Coates is an African American author born September 30th, 1975, Baltimore, Maryland. He's a graduate of Woodlawn High School and Howard University. After being hired at The Atlantic, he wrote his most famous essay, The Case for Reparations, in June 2014. He is the author of the books The Beautiful Struggle, We Were 8 Years in Power, and Between the World and Me. He is also the author of the novel The Water Dancer, which was published in September of 2019. Currently, he is the Distinguished Writer in Residence at New York University's Arthur L. Carter Journalism Institute, and he's also the current author of Marvel's The Black Panther and Captain America comic books. Mr. Coates is married to Kenyatta Matthews, and they have one son, Samori. Between the World and Me was written as a letter to his 15-year-old son, Samori, after the death of Michael Brown, who was a victim of police shooting in Ferguson, Missouri. The book brings a connection of personal experiences through details of racism, political expectations, cultural issues, and societal issues, given through a historical view with a parallel connection of real-world events and struggles for African Americans. This book delves into the events which started Black Lives Matter, as well as the relationship between families and fathers and sons. Teachings Between the World and Me, discussing the author, the book, poverty, racism, father and son relationship, the American dream, police brutality, with open-ended questionings, guided questions, the African American family structure, and societal ideals and beliefs. To be Black in the Baltimore of my youth was to be naked before the elements of the world, before all the guns, fists, knives, crack, rape, and disease. The nakedness is not an error nor pathology. The nakedness is the correct and intended result of policy, the predictable upshot of people forced for centuries to live under fear. The law did not protect us. Page 17, unquote. The quote establishes some elements that young African American youth must accept and learn to deal with at an early age. Living in poverty or within urban settings may consist of ghettos and housing projects. Young African Americans, begin their lives with what is essentially a strike against them. Being a youth within the inner city can be cruel and devastating because during this time, many inner city youth are vulnerable to those things which can and are sometimes looked upon as a way out or as the only way of life. Ta-Nehisi Coates begins his life with the harshness of destruction and the vulnerability of a newborn baby. Americans believe in the reality of race as a defined, indubitable feature of the natural world. Racism, the need to ascribe bone-deep features to people and then humiliate, reduce, and destroy them, inevitably follows from this inalterable condition, unquote. Page 7. Racism is an ongoing and prevalent reality within the lives of Black people, and especially young Black men. The ideals and knowledge of being ostracized and overlooked are issues that places the stigmatism throughout America. History has always shown that people of color are held to different standards and beliefs. Racism is born out of ignorance of the ideas that someone who looks different than you are more knowledgeable and more favorable than you. Racism is not the same as race. However, it has been placed along the same lines of determining the factors of how to interact with various races. The father-son relationship. It is essential because it holds the dynamic of training and teaching of how to be a man. The father-son relationship teaches growth and understanding of the issues and allows for a connection of taking care of the family unit. In the past, within the African American family dynamic, men held the foundation of the family structure. Women are the caretakers and the caregivers, but men were the disciplinarians to hold the structure together. Only a man can explain and guide another young man into how they are supposed to grow. As the father-son structure has faltered, so has the dynamic of the Black household. The African American family structure. One of the strongest bonds is the African American family structure. As the book goes along, Ta-Nehisi details how he met the mother of his child, who later became his wife. He also speaks of the foundational structures within many families. In many African American households, mothers are the stronghold, but culturally, the family structure is rooted in deep history going back to slavery. The traditions within the family structure include all generations of the family. Ta-Nehisi states his mother was an educator, his father was a member of the Black Panther Party. And he details of how the dream is what is being taught through the eyes of generational members within his family. And although he was brought up to believe those things, he had to break with the tradition and show his son how to understand the realities of life. The American Dream. The American Dream is not an American dream for most Black Americans. In teaching American literature, students must learn about the foundational documents, and we discuss how every citizen is afforded the rights of the country. Ta-Nehisi Coates opens the door to his son about being equal and having equal access to the things that many people look at as ideal. He states, and for so long I have wanted to escape into the dream to fold my country over my head like a blanket. But this has never been an option because the dream rests on our backs, the bedding made from our bodies. And knowing that the dream persists without warring with the known world, I was sad for the host. I was sad for all those families. I was sad for my country. But above all, in that moment, I was sad for you. Unquote. Page 11. Quote, for police brutality. But you are a Black boy and you must be responsible for your body in a way that other boys cannot. Indeed, you must be responsible for the worst actions of other Black bodies, which somehow will always be assigned to you. Unquote. Page 71. This letter was written during a time after Michael Brown was killed and the police who killed him were not charged. This was not the only infraction that occurred during this time. The killing of Black men and the acquittal and non-charging of the officers involved brought Black Lives Matters to the forefront. The emotional and psychological feelings that happened changed the dynamic of how today's youth feel. Police brutality is not new within this country, but today's situations are based in racism, fear, and ignorance. Families are detailed in teaching their children the hands up, don't shoot method so that they do not become another statistic. Cultural idols within the African American culture speaks volume by fighting and prevailing against the racism that came before this generation. Although many of the icons and idols are deceased, their message spoke volumes and opened doors for other people to speak out and to take on the fight for equality. For Ta-Nehisi Coates, although his father was a leader within the Black Panther Party, he looked up to Malcolm X and to significant authors to open up his mind of truth, to question and delve deeper into the cultural nature of African Americans. He stated, I love Malcolm because Malcolm never lied, unlike the schools and their facade of morality, unlike the streets and their bravado, unlike the world of dreamers. I loved him because he made it plain, never mystical or esoteric, because his science was not rooted in the actions of spooks and mystery gods, but in the work of the physical world. End quote. Page 36. In historically Black colleges and universities, the linchpin of higher education, of higher excellence within the African American culture, Ta-Nehisi Coates tells his son of his time at Howard University in Washington, D.C. HBCUs are the gateway into the African American culture. He infuses the knowledge of seeing various people with various abilities with opening up his vision to the mecca of his existence. Although his father worked on the campus, his father also owned a book printing shop and geared him to learn about other African Americans within the world. HBCUs bring together all types of people, religions, societal levels, and educational levels. He states, I was admitted to Howard University, but formed and shaped by the Mecca. These institutions are related but not the same. Howard University is an institution of higher education, Concerned with the LSTAT, magna cum laude, and Phi Beta Kappa. The Mecca is a machine crafted to capture and concentrate the dark energy of all African people and inject it directly into the student body. End quote. Page 40. And the references which were used.